The point of the super lineup is to actually deliver better price performance, and especially in terms of VRAM. So if they can't really achieve that, they won't release the cards.
And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and this episode is sponsored by AliExpress and their 11/11 sale and CDkeyoffer.com. Check links in the description to support Moore's Law is Dead. And check out this guest that we've had on now. I think this is the fourth time you've been on. You are becoming a regular, I have to say, and that's because you are there's guests I put in different categories. Obviously, I don't have anyone on that I don't enjoy having on, but you are one that is always, if I'm being honest, it's easy to have you on because you always can talk about anything quickly. It's like, I know Fabio will have something to say, and I know he will have a perspective where he focuses on some things I don't always. And so it's always an insightful discussion. So I apologize to everyone for being lazy by having someone on that I know makes my job easy, but thank you. Please tell everyone, though, who you are, what you do. And I like asking this lately, like, what keeps you doing what you're doing on YouTube? Like, why do you keep doing it?
Well, as was stated before, guys, I'm Fabio Pisco from the channel Ancient Gameplays. And what keeps me going? Let's say that basically nothing, just pure will. Let's say that I just love what I do. And let's say that, do you know that random guy that just lives around the block from you and loves tech? I just took that further. Basically, I just invested on that love that I have for technology and for the enthusiast grade technology, for the low level technology. Basically, every piece of technology, or almost every piece of technology, from little things like, let's say, power banks to GPUs. Every little thing, I just love to look at things and see how they evolved, what they have new now, everything, and that's why I love to do what I do, basically.
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to you in the tech tuber space, not a lot of people spend time testing drivers, like going out of their way to see if like a performance claim or a fix works as well as other people say it does, or trying to find a fix for some issue in drivers. Like, that's the sort of thing where you would definitely only be doing that if you probably would already be doing that on your own, even if you didn't have a YouTube channel just for fun, right?
Yeah, if I had the money.
Yes, well, probably a lot less because you obviously need to put bread on the table. But let me see. Actually, I want to start here. This was kind of a thing, if I'm being honest, my opinion, during a slow news week. It was a controversy that everyone could talk about that blew up and seems to have already dissipated. But there was quite a debacle about RDNA 2 maintenance mode. And like, if RDNA 2 is already being end of life, or if AMD will support their architectures long term. From your perspective, how would you summarize what happened, how the story blew up, what was going on, and what your opinion is on how serious it is or isn't, and like what it really means?
Well, first of all, I believe that this was mainly kind of a PR mistake. Not exactly marketing, I would say, but definitely a PR mistake, since in most case scenarios, AMD doesn't really control what comes out or what goes in, but especially what comes out. and they should, because we know that people nowadays will snap for everything. Like, at the minimal spark, they will just snap. And this was it. Now, am I saying that AMD didn't try to kind of end the support sooner for the RDNA 2 and the RDNA 1 GPUs? No, I am not. They most likely tried to do it. What I'm saying is that people kind of exaggerated a lot on their reactions, because, again, it's maintenance mode, not legacy. We saw AMD doing legacy mode like dozens of times in the past, and they never talked about maintenance mode. They talked about legacy. So if they really wanted to put this card in these cards in legacy mode, they would just call it legacy, not maintenance. Now, again, I believe that they kind of juggled with the words here, and they tried to see if people would kind of notice it or not really. But again, to be honest, they just should shut up, because that's what
I
Nvidia
think if
does.
they would have said nothing, this wouldn't have happened.
I mean, they could do exactly the same. They could put it in maintenance mode, a different branch, because it was using a different branch already, kind of, at least. So it was already kind of the same. And if they continued to release drivers in the combined state, people wouldn't even notice. That's the reality. And nobody would complain. But since they said that in the release notes, and I didn't even realize that people were really complaining so much about it, because I made the driver videos, the review, and I was like, well, I mean, everything's going fine. No issues whatsoever. So they are putting on a different branch, and I said in my video, they are putting it on a different branch, and in a different perspective, this might actually be good. And it was good, because some issues that we had, for example, in terms of recording, they now went to the newer GPUs, but the older GPUs were fixed. And even on those drivers, the 25.10.2 that were already branched out into parts, the RX 6000 series had a fix. So if they weren't supposed to have fixes because they were branched out, in the first drivers that they were branched out, there wouldn't be any fixes. And they had at least two, the ones that were in the release notes and the recording with AMD software Adrenaline, AMD Adrenaline software, sorry. So the fixes were there. Now, I believe that they might have thought of doing something like, well, we are going to release the combined drivers, but maybe just releasing serious drivers for the previous cards, like every 2 months or 3 months. Even though the combined drivers were there, they wouldn't do
like
really
double
much.
Check everything for RDNA 1 and 2 once a quarter, whereas every 2 weeks, RDNA
or
4
maybe
gets an update.
Yeah, or maybe if some really big game comes out, we kind of we can try to optimize a bit.
We're gonna make sure Call of Duty has day one support for RDNA 1.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's what they will do. Still.
Anyways,
Anyways, they just said, well, it will continue, because in a matter of fact, I believe that it would continue anyways. They just phrased it differently, and people bashed me a lot, like I worked for AMD or something, because of what I said. Because again, I always look at things on the more kind of on the bright side. I don't like to be negative, because I mean, I'm not really into like the energy stuff and so on, but I just believe that if you're really, really negative, you'll attract more negativeness, whatever. So yeah, and I it's just not the way I look at things. And people think, since I am being more positive or trying to be more positive, that I'm somehow kind of trying to not show the mistake that AMD did. I mean, who knows? I get that
criticism all of the time too. Like an example would be if I'm talking about how, you know, I don't know what's going on with Intel Battle Mage. And by the way, here we are in November. Where is the B770? I thought that was supposed to come out in June, according to some websites, and I never heard it was. And then they'll see me say that on a video and go, well, why is he smiling? Why is he happy? It's like, well, I can't, like, am I supposed to frown for 20 minutes in every video? It's like, whether it's good news or bad news, I'm probably going to smile at some point in the video, just for my own mental health. It doesn't mean I'm happy it's happening. I'm excited to talk about it, though, and that's probably why I'm smiling, because I'm a nerd. I'm just always happy to talk about this. It doesn't mean I'm defending these companies or happy bad things happen. I'm just excited to talk about it.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. I mean, we're kind of the messenger, so don't shoot the messenger. We are just spreading the news. I myself, particularly, besides some really interesting things that I like to test, I'm not happy or sad that X company or Y company does this or that. I'm just sharing the news. And I mean, I think that I have a good life, so why should I be sad? Unless it is something really, really bad, which wasn't the case, by the way. Just people nowadays, they look at this like they were shot in the leg or something. I mean, they need to. That's another thing. I said people on my live stream and so on. I told them, just stop whining. Just I literally told them, stop whining, shut up, and vote with your money. If you want to go Nvidia, just go Nvidia. You don't really need to whine. Now, there's a difference, at least in Portugal, and I believe that people, maybe this is kind of a language barrier or kind of a social barrier in this specific case, but for example, in Portugal, there's a difference in between whining and complaining. Two different things, entirely different things. So I can complain without whining. I can say, this was a mess. Maybe I'm not buying AMD anymore, so maybe I'll just try to look into the future and look at Nvidia in another way, or maybe if AMD retracts, I might think of it. And there's a difference in between saying that and going, sorry for the language. You can cut this off. Like, fuck AMD.
I swear all the time. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, fuck AMD. I'm not buying anymore. I don't care about this shit. This is a mess. I mean, you are already doing. You are extrapolating, of course, doing everything you want, but it doesn't really help at all.
Mm-hmm. That's
the difference in between complaining. You're basically keeping it civil and at the same time being rational. You're being rational. Because you never say never. Most of that people that say, I'll never buy AMD. Oh, shut
they
up.
will, yeah.
Shut up.
Or they never were going to, right?
Yeah. But shut up, because in a eventual future, you might only have AMD, or you might only have Nvidia, or you might really have Nvidia just quitting the GPU business. And everything can happen. So
or like
never
what
say
happened
never.
when Blackwell launched, where the drivers just did not work, and you kind of had to buy AMD.
So never say never. That's what I mean when I say be rational, don't be over emotional.
Yeah, I think there's a weird thing that goes on here. I think a lot of the biggest tech channels, honestly, I'll say it, all of them, whether it's Gamers Nexus to Hardware Unboxed, I'm not nearly as big as them, but I get accused this. There's this tendency for people to call you an AMD fanboy more than they call you an Nvidia fanboy for some reason, even though I'm using a 4090 right now. So I don't know why I'm an AMD fanboy, but and maybe it's because Nvidia is the most popular product. And so they're like, well, why don't 60% of the tech tubers say all good Nvidia stuff? And it's I don't know, but it seems like if the higher up you get, the more often AMD and Nvidia and enthusiasts, it's more of a 50-50 thing, not like an 80-20 thing or something. And so I think you get accused of that more. But I think because of that, a lot of tech tubers, and even just some people who don't have channels but want to get cred amongst their friends, if AMD messes up, they attack them more to look like they're fair and balanced. That's my opinion. This is kind of very much so just throwing out ideas that it doesn't really matter. But I think there's sometimes a performative thing towards all companies, but especially towards AMD, because it's easy to hate on Nvidia because they're the biggest one. But that means if you get a chance to hate on AMD, I think a lot of people jump on it so that they can prove they're not biased. When in reality, I think a lot of these things, I don't know if you remember the Starfield thing where everyone said Starfield isn't going to get DLSS. And I from day one was like, yeah, well, I promise you it will. And then it did. And why was everyone so mad, But
in terms of Starfield, it didn't get DLSS from day one, actually.
No, it didn't get it from day one, but there were people saying that it would never get it. And I was like, yes, it will. AMD does not have enough money to bribe these companies.
Yeah, and I believe that the reason why people just bash Nvidia more is because they expect Nvidia to be more evil. Mm-hmm. Because they're bigger, and we always tend to support the underdog. That's how the human mentality works. But
that means once the underdog messes up, I think a lot of people jump on it when it was not a big deal.
And that happens exactly because people want the underdog to succeed. And in order to succeed, they can't fail as much as the bigger dog. So they need to go. They need to do better in order for people to keep going, to keep buying, and in order for them to grow. And that's why I believe people get madder when AMD does crap compared to Nvidia. They tend to bash Nvidia more, but it's weird because they bash on Nvidia, but after, let's say, a couple of months, they go and buy an Nvidia card. Mm-hmm. That's what happens in reality. And on the AMD side, they tend to kind of maybe bash it a bit less, but then they don't buy the card.
Well, I think when it comes to this situation, though, with the RDNA 2 maintenance mode, I just want to recap the facts of the matter because I think much like you, right? You just said you put out a video and everyone was like, why aren't you talking about this? And you were like, oh, I didn't think. And I actually, I think it may have happened right after Broken Silicon came out, so I couldn't have. But like, I was surprised in a live stream where I didn't have any plans to talk about this, that I got tons of questions about it. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I guess let's wait and see how the dust settles in a few days. And by Monday, no one was really talking about it anymore already. And that's because at the end of the day, all that happened is AMD had already moved RDNA 1 and 2 to its own branch. So anyone who thinks they changed something with a maintenance mode, no, they didn't. It was already on its own branch, and no one was saying anything about it. And that's because RDNA 1 and 2 are very, very similar architectures. They're almost the same thing, except RDNA 2 is basically just a little better with Infinity Cache. RDNA 3 and 4 are way different than 1 and 2. It's common sense. Like, you wouldn't be developing. There was a while where they like Fermi drivers with Maxwell. Those are so different that there's no way you would want the exact same driver path for everything you're doing, or there would just be bugs everywhere. And frankly, you just couldn't do it. So it's common sense. Eventually, their newer architectures would be over here. These ones would be over there. They'd be in the same driver download. And then they'd probably, because they've been optimizing RDNA 2, well, and RDNA 1 for 6 years now, they probably don't need to check it as much. And that's it. It's still going to get game updates. I think if AMD would have said nothing, like you said earlier, nothing would have happened. And I think the maintenance mode thing turned into a controversy because, well, this was a chance to have something to talk about. But also, it did sound bad, to be honest. And I just want to know, why this keeps happening. Like, who let someone at AMD say that? Like, I just don't get it, because that's what it was, is a nothing burger. Again, it was already on a different driver path, people. So why weren't you freaking out a month ago? Like, they just said something stupid.
Yeah, and I've said on the follow-up video on the driver release video, I did a follow-up, and I basically stated that if people thought, or if people think that RDNA 2 was still getting performance uplifts, they're mad of their minds. So maybe in some specific scenario here and there, the performance uplifts might be there, like small, and maybe for the top tier cards like 6800 non-XT and above. Okay. But again, very, very specific performance uplifts for some games or some fixes. But overall, the performance uplifts just weren't there because the architecture is kind of squeezed to the max.
Yeah.
So to some degree,
squeezed every drop of juice out of it.
Exactly. So to some degree, you can actually kind of increase performance in some games that were recently released. But I did bench, and I stated that I benchmarked in almost every driver version an RX 6000 series card over the years, and like from the past 2 years till now, the performance increase in new games for those new, basically RX 6000 on the new drivers that support the new games that were released. RDNA 3 was getting performance uplifts. RDNA 2 wasn't. Or only on, let's say, 6950 XT. Mm-hmm. On cards below that, not really, because again, they can't really squeeze that much out of an older architecture. And that's why they kind of put it in maintenance mode.
It's tricky because, again, and this is where people go, why are you defending AMD? I'm not. I'm explaining why I think they're doing it. Doesn't mean I necessarily agree with it. I believe that the RDNA 2 running a version of FSR 4 like would require performance mode to actually get a boost. It still looks better than FSR 3.1, so you would say, why not do it? I think there's just some concern of two things out of AMD. Again, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about RDNA 3. I think RDNA 3 is going to get a version of FSR 4 that works great. That's not my concern. But when it comes to RDNA 2, I think they're concerned that if they release something that doesn't look as good as the other ones, that it would be bad marketing for AMD products, because people would say, oh, I can try FSR 4 on my 6800 XT now, and they'd go, oh, this doesn't look remotely as good as DLSS. On top of that, I think there's a concern about like just maintaining that in the other driver. Like we've just talked about this, there's two driver paths. There's one for 3 and 4, and there's one for 1 and 2. They probably don't want to keep updating the FSR 4 part of that driver path with RDNA 1 or 2. I still think they should put something in there so there's at least an unofficial way to turn it on for RDNA 2 in the drivers. But that's their concern. You know, their concern is maybe it wouldn't be good marketing for them or whatever. But I agree with you that if they just had like a toggle to experimentally just auto turn it on in the drivers, and they say, hey, it's experimental, we're never going to touch it again, I would say that's favorable. I agree.
Yeah, and especially since now with a most recent toggle that they had, which is basically every single game is kind of whitelisted. Now they don't really have to whitelist on a per game basis. Every single game is whitelisted. So if the game is using an official FSR 3.1 version, doesn't really matter if it is 3.1.1 up to 3.1.5, doesn't really matter. As soon as it isn't a modified FSR version, the software will just kick in and it will inject FSR 4. So they can do exactly the same again on an experimental basis or something like that, but they can do exactly the same. Instead of using FP8, use the Int8. I mean, if the community can do it, and I mean, they need to listen more to the community. If the community is saying, well, I tested FSR 4, I'm not getting as much performance boost as I get with FSR 3, but I love FSR 4 Int8. It's much better on my 6800 XT or on my 7800 XT. So if it is much better, I'll use it. I'll get a small performance boost, but the quality is much better than FSR 3. And people are still using it. I mean, I just tested, for example, because I already have one. B-Link sent me a mini computer with the Strix Halo. Strix Halo, the 8060S. I believe it's a Strix Halo, yeah. And I mean, 40 compute units integrated, awesome. And I tested the Int8 version. I just finished today testing 65 games on that iGPU, and lots of them I was using the modified DLL of Int8, which means that AMD can improve upon that because they were working on that before. They can improve it, and it was great. Even at 1080p, I could get a performance uplift when using that same quality mode. I didn't really need the performance mode. And I tested before the 6950 XT and the 6800 non-XT. You can use it. Quality mode will still deliver a bit of performance. Balanced and performance mode will just give you, let's say, 20-30% performance.
Yeah, that's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
So as long as I agree though. As long, again, I think the final version, the official one, will work well on RDNA 3. I don't think there's any question
definitely.
they'll have that, which, would be the 7800 XT, or Strix Halo is RDNA 3.5. So I bet it will work even better. But RDNA 2, I agree. It should just be big letters, experimental, might cause flickering in some games or whatever, but there will be games where there's no issues. And I think it would be a huge marketing win and get a lot of goodwill. I would say too, maybe they didn't need to before, but after this maintenance mode thing, they should probably just do this now to win back some goodwill.
Yeah,
I would say too.
And I mean, we can be talking about this, and then FSR Redstone works on every GPU, and we'll be like, well, anyway, I mean, that can happen. Personally, I don't think it will. But that can happen, I guess.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, I think I was directly told this by a couple of people that, like, I think it's probably just RDNA 3 and later that will be official, and they won't hide that you could, experimentally make it run with a DLL swap or something if you want to on the older cards. But I would say just put the toggle in. I mean, I still think almost no one will probably use it. Honestly, because most people don't pay as much. Well, me and you would, but a lot of people don't pay attention. They buy a laptop. A lot of
my viewers will. Yeah.
Well, but your viewers are, probably top 1% of tech nerds, if we're being honest. But I think even just having it there as an option, those tech nerds will be the people that tell their friends to buy AMD anyways. So
and they will be the people, and they will be the people to keep buying the discrete GPUs. So if they kind of feel betrayed by the company that they have the GPU, they will buy from another company, even if it means buying from Nvidia. And that's why I said several times that I wanted Intel to succeed. And I'm really sad. Really, I'm really sad that they didn't. I bought the A770, I bought the B580, and I was expecting them to succeed and to go to Celestial then and make it even better. But yeah, that wasn't the case. Maybe I can foresee a future where Nvidia just says something like, well, we're going full AI or full some crap that they find useful in a couple of years, and they will go like, okay, Intel, now you make our GPUs.
Yeah, I think.
That's something.
Oh, yeah, they're gaming ones. I think that
Yeah,
is very plausible. That Nvidia. Look, it all depends on what happens to the AI bubble. If the AI bubble pops tomorrow, then Nvidia will probably be running to make RTX 6000 at TSMC as quickly as possible to try to get more revenue from that. But if this AI bubble continues for another, I mean, I don't think it will for 5 years, but at least another few years. Yeah, I think there's a good chance the next generation they'll use a budget node for their gaming cards if they can, probably from Intel, and then the best of the best they save for AI, or they'll probably be like one 6090 card for $3,000 that is like super cut down that you get, but everything else will be on a cheaper node or something. I could see that. Yeah.
yeah, and again, there are many variables that depends on AMD as well. What AMD does with the GPU division.
So I was going to ask this later, but now that you're kind of bringing up other competitors, I think this is a good time. Lucas writes in and says, "Hi, Fabio and Tom. Where do you think we'd be if Microsoft really had gone with Intel for their next Xbox? Would Intel still be pouring more money into a gaping hole? Would Xbox be flailing even harder because Arc is, well, no. Would Arc actually be fine because Microsoft would have provided some sort of secret sauce to prevent the whole thing going up in flames? What are your thoughts?" So I'm only going to talk about it from Intel's perspective. I think Xbox is its whole other can of worms if we want to get into if they'll succeed or not. But I do think, and I think I reported on this. I don't remember what the video was called or when, but like oh no, I think I do. I can probably pull it up for this. I'll put it on screen. Microsoft did go to Intel, and Intel did bid for Xbox Magnus. And my understanding, though, is if they would have gotten it, I think it would have been huge for Arc. I think that would have given them a huge shot in the arm of like, oh, well, now we'll get better driver support. We'll get the revenue. I mean, it frankly would have been insurance for the future of Arc, because I know that, I was told, or I heard that back when AMD almost went out of business, that Sony was considering buying part of AMD just so they could keep making PlayStations for them.
I heard that as well.
Yeah, so that probably would have happened if Microsoft made their next gen Xbox at Intel. That would have been insurance where they'll bail out Intel if they need to keep making Xboxes. Having said that, I heard Microsoft was kind of jerking Intel around, that they were never going to choose them, that they used them to bid against AMD, so AMD would give Microsoft better prices on Magnus. And so as much as I think it would have been, and it would have been huge for Intel if they got the next Xbox contract, from the people that work at Microsoft I talked to, I don't think there was a real chance they were going to go with Intel. It's unfortunate because from what I heard, Intel put a lot of effort into it and they really tried to win, and they were just using them to get lower prices from AMD. In fact, I heard Nintendo basically did that to AMD with Nvidia for the Switch 2 as well. So that stuff happens. And yeah, it would have been, I don't know what you think. I think it would have been a big deal. I just don't think it would have happened. I don't think Microsoft actually would have gone with Intel.
They could have if Intel actually had something interesting on that regard, and they don't. At least for now, they don't.
True.
And again, I'm a huge fan of competition, and I really want Intel to just scrap out everything they have now and say, well, we are going back into the discrete GPU business, and we need to do better in terms of hardware for the software to be easier to code. Because they have fundamental flaws, hardware sided, and they are kind of trying to fix it with the software, the same way with RDNA 3, for example. It has some fundamental flaws here and there in terms of the multi-chip module design, because that's how it is when you do the first iteration of something. It always has flaws. That's normal.
The interesting thing, though, with Intel is sometimes I think it's good to just take a step back and have an opinion that isn't based on anyone I talk to at AMD or Intel. It's just, if I look at the publicly available information, the recent roadmap Intel put out doesn't even have Celestial on the roadmap. I mean, it actually took me, because I put out a tweet where I'm like, there's no Druid. And then a week later, I was like, wait, there's no Celestial too. I just realized. And what that tells you is they don't know if they will even call something Celestial. And to anyone that says they've already said they will, well, Tom Peterson a month ago said that Celestial was in Panther Lake, and now he doesn't. So I don't think they really know what's going on there. And I think at a minimum, what this tells you is that they think there's a very good chance they're just going to switch to NVIDIA chiplets as quickly as possible.
Yeah. The employees are getting bamboozled by Intel.
Yeah.
And they
have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, the sheer structure of Intel is just completely falling apart, and they need to restructure like ASAP in order to make tough decisions that need to be made. But will definitely affect the company, or can affect the company in a positive way.
This piece of content is brought to you by AliExpress and their Double 11 Singles Day sale. Actually, speaking of Singles Day, I'm not single. And no, it's not because I have this adorable dog here. In fact, despite my best efforts, I have managed to get and keep a girlfriend. And unfortunately, for years now, she's been using a little portable monitor as her main monitor, whether it is for work or for play. And I thought I had to change that, give her an early Christmas present with the help of AliExpress. You see, they have this awesome Gawfolk curved 1500R 34-inch 3440 by 1440 HDR monitor that came with free less than a week shipping to my house in Nashville, Tennessee, in the United States, and she absolutely loves it. She is an accountant, so the ultra-wide display is perfect for her work on the days that she works from home, but it's also perfect for play as well, as you can see her here using it to play Hogwarts Legacy. So, if you are interested in getting reasonably priced products like the monitor featured in this ad here today, shipped quickly and reliably to your doorstep, check out AliExpress right now through the directions and links below in the description during their Double 11 mega sale that is going on from November 11th to November 19th, offering up to 90% off site-wide. Again, make sure you do check out those links and any offer codes noted below in the description to ensure that you both get the best deal possible on products across the website AliExpress, but then also to show support for the channel. That's right, you are really helping Moore's Law is Dead if you even just click on the links below. But of course, using the noted offer codes below and buying a product at AliExpress if you want one helps the channel even more. So one more time, again, support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out AliExpress during their Double 11 mega sale today. Man, it really was kind of a mistake to commit to having her on my lap this whole ad, I gotta say.
Let's move on to this because we're already talking about GPUs and kind of the future, that sort of thing. So another Chris writes in and he says, "Greetings, Tom and Fabio. Are you at all hesitant to recommend NVIDIA? I'm having black screening issues with the 4070 Ti. I have in another system, and my 9070 XT system does not seem to have any issues." So what I would say is I switched to, actually, I think I might be able to have the camera just like look at it quickly. Like I have a 9070 XT back there that I used pretty much all summer to test it for videos and stuff. And I found it like, I was like very, very, very impressed how stable RDNA 4 was. Like this is I had the opinion a few months ago that AMD is beating Nvidia actually in driver quality at this point. And the reason I said that is because I had so many like little issues, not big problems. I mean, obviously I put out videos. It's clearly not stopping me from doing my job, but like flickering screens, like when I change a resolution in a game, it like flickers for like 10, 20 seconds with Nvidia, whereas AMD just switches to the resolution immediately. I didn't realize after I put the 9070 XT, like how many of my problems with Windows wasn't Windows, it was NVIDIA's drivers that were causing all these little hiccups with things. Now, since then, for about the past month, I put the 4090 back in my system. I'd still say it is not as good at switching monitors quickly, but it doesn't seem to have the issues I used to have back then. But I still see tons of people in the Moore's Law is Dead Discord and the YouTube comments saying they're having problems. And so what I'm getting to is 3 months ago, I basically said, do not buy NVIDIA because their drivers do not seem to work very well. And frankly, they cost too much compared to AMD right now. At this point, I would say if you have better price performance with NVIDIA, sure, you can buy them. But I personally would not give NVIDIA much of a premium anymore over AMD because I think AMD has caught up in terms and actually it still beats NVIDIA on driver stability. And FSR 4 is pretty good, but I wonder what you think.
Well, on that topic, I think it kind of depends because being kind of the of the guy that helps everyone out when they have issues. I see a lot of things, and in my own perspective, I've used the 5080 and the 5070 basically just a little bit after they were released. And to be honest, I didn't have any issues. And I used them in several monitors. I have I'm looking at this one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I believe. And I tested in some of them and there were no issues, both for the 5080, 5070, and the 5060 Ti. I do those gameplay benchmarks like 50 games, 40 games, and it was completely fine. And I do believe that some people have those issues, but it's the same as on the AMD side usually. So it's usually related to user error because they aren't doing things correctly, or the GPU is faulty, or the drivers are really the issue, because you might have a specific issue related to that specific monitor when going with that specific card. And that might happen. In the monitors that I do have, I never had those issues with both AMD and Nvidia. But again, I mean, I guess it depends. I believe that most users don't really know what they're doing, being Nvidia or AMD, and that's completely fine. That's completely fine. That's normal. I was once that guy that didn't know what I was doing. I was the guy. I was the guy that thought that, well, my GPU is failing. When I had the 5700 XT in the sheer beginning of the channel, the 5700 XT, I was like, well, the GPU is having issues because of the drivers. And no, it was actually my CPU overclock that wasn't stable.
I've seen that many times. You switch to a new GPU, your new GPU is faster. Your CPU overclock was not actually as stable as you thought it was.
Exactly. It pushes the CPU more, the CPU and RAM, because it has the possibility of going to higher FPS. It stresses the CPU and RAM more, and then you find that you have an instability. I had lots of people telling me, well, I had my 3060, and now I got my 70s, let's say my 7700 XT or the 7800 XT, and now I don't really like AI. Well, the specific words were kind of, I gave AMD a chance, and now my GPU isn't working, and so on. The deal was, again, CPU and RAM instability. Lots and lots of people. I immediately told them, well, you went from a slower to a faster GPU. Maybe I would check your settings in terms of CPU and RAM. Guess what? Turn off XCMP, or in this case, Expo. Go to the settings, test again, fine. So it was a RAM issue.
So you haven't had a lot of driver issues with either of them this year, you're saying. And so would you give any premium, though, either way to NVIDIA or AMD? Or would you just say, hey, whichever one's better price performance?
Usually, yeah. But if things are at the same price, I would still have to go with NVIDIA. And for this, well, not in all scenarios. For example, going 9070 versus 5070, I would go like 100% AMD.
Well, because they don't, So, and you would say, assuming it has enough RAM, because I can't recommend any 12 or 8 gigabyte cards anymore unless they're like $300 or less.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
On that regard, of course, and because the 9070 has more raw power. So it's faster. It's faster, has more VRAM at the same price. It's a no-brainer. Now, if we're talking about the 9070 XT and the 5070 Ti, if they're at the same price again, I would have to go with the 5070 Ti. And for one specific reason, features. I mean, AMD is getting really, really close in terms of features, but they're still too slow. They need to go faster. I mean, they are a $1 billion company right now, so they have lots of money. Just put more money.
They're not a
$1 trillion
company, though.
Yeah, but I mean, they still have a lot of money.
Yeah.
They still have a lot of money. They need to put more effort on the GPU side. They need to make things faster. If they need more money, put more money. If they need, let's say, if they need more people, put more people, but they need to make things faster. I mean, FSR 4 has been released in March. We're currently in November, and we still don't have FSR 4 for Vulkan. And okay, they were waiting for Vulkan libraries and so on. Well, the Vulkan libraries are already here. And where's FSR 4 for Vulkan? They're still waiting. Most likely, they will release it alongside Redstone. I mean, that
Redstone update's got to come.
Yeah,
I get the feeling they're working on it with Sony though, and they kind of like it's kind of like going to come out on PlayStation 5 and desktop at the same time.
Yeah.
In quarter one. I don't know. That's my guess, is that it's kind of one giant package. They probably should have just made it smaller packages they release over time, but
Yeah, and
I
people
think
get
that's
more
what's going
excited.
on.
If they
But so you'd still give a small premium to Nvidia though.
Yeah, because they do have the premium. They have
But they
more
have to
features.
have the same amount of RAM. They have to have the same performance, and then you would. But you would say that the premium you pay is a lot less than it would have been 3 years ago.
Definitely.
Yeah, they're getting close. Mark Cerny, Radeon's best engineer, writes in and says, do you think the Super Series will be enough to garner favor for the 50 series, or will it be a fix applied that was too late? Well, it depends if it comes out or when it comes out at this point, I would say. I will say if it comes out a year from now, who cares? But if it comes out a month from now or something, I think it could be big, as long as it's the same price as now, or almost the same price. Like if they launch a $1,000 24 gigabyte card, and it's actually $1,000 to be fair, they launch a $750 24 gigabyte, or even 800, and specifically I think the 5070 Super with 18 gigabytes is the most exciting one. If that one was 600 or less, I do actually think that would be a big deal. I think AMD would maybe want to consider some price cuts, because an 18 gigabyte 5070 for 600 is actually pretty competitive in my opinion. Would you agree?
Yeah, I was just going to say that AMD kind of played the long game here, since they're using GDDR6. Now GDDR7 prices are going up, and even if they don't release the Super lineup, they will need to most likely increase the prices of the normal lineup. Mm-hmm. And AMD doesn't really need to care about, because they use the cheap GDDR6, so they can just work with the prices much better than Nvidia can on that regard. We all know that the Nvidia margins are way higher, of course, way bigger, but still, AMD uses the cheap GDDR6. They can just go, well, you want the 32 gigabytes version? Take it. We just release we just go down, let's say 50 or $100 on the normal 9070 XT, put the 9070 XT 32 gigabytes at, let's say 700, and people will still buy.
Yeah. I mean, I think people RDNA 4 really is quite impressive. I still don't think people like say it enough. Like, AMD is getting the same performance as Nvidia while using GDDR6, while Nvidia is using GDDR7. And in fact, they're often using less cache, and it's L3 cache instead of L2, which should be a bigger advantage for Nvidia. So there's no doubt about it. I think RDNA 4 proves that AMD is like the master of bandwidth. Like, they are so good at handling that now. But on the subject, Jesper Larson writes and says, hi, Tom and Fabio. Love both of your content. Quick question. Is the Super Series launch date affected by the rumored GDDR7 availability due to higher demand from server and AI customers, similar to what we have seen with DDR5 RAM availability? So, I mean, I've been getting tons of questions over the past week. Is Super canceled? Is Super canceled? Like, are you going to talk about it? And my answer is, the second I saw the rumors that it could be canceled, of course, I reached out to like a dozen people to see if this is true. And the feedback I've gotten is that if it is canceled, Nvidia hasn't told everyone yet. And one person said it sounds like there could be some delays. And if it is canceled, again, we'll find out soon. But it's not like Nvidia just told everyone it's canceled yet behind the scenes. Having said that, I don't think you need a source when you see DDR5 go from $130 to $300 in a week. Without any sources, I would be concerned they're going to cancel Super. I don't need any insiders to look at that and go, oh, I don't know. That makes me a bit concerned. So my answer is, whatever I've said about NVIDIA Super release dates, remove that from my leaks, because so much has changed in the market since a few months ago that I'm not sure what's going to happen with Super anymore. And I don't know if it's canceled. I think there could be some delays at a minimum from what I hear. But wouldn't you agree, Fabio, if DDR5 just doubled in price in a week, that's a sign Super might be canceled. I mean, I don't know how they could afford to launch these.
Yeah, I believe so. With GDDR7 prices going up, yeah, that won't happen, because the point of the Super lineup is to actually deliver better price performance, and especially in terms of VRAM. So if they can't really achieve that, they won't release the cards. Now, what AMD can do is to put another nail in Nvidia's coffin when it comes to the mid-tier GPUs is, again, just do their refreshes. They can just refresh their GPUs because they know Nvidia can't beat them in price performance, so they can do it if they want to. Now, will they? That's another topic.
Yeah. So I would say two things. I want to expand on your point about Super being cheaper, because I think a lot of people, and I've seen this before, like the 40 Super series comes out, or especially like the 20 Super series from Turing. People would see like a 8 gigabyte 2060 Super kind of replacing the 6 gigabyte 2060, though it costs more. And people going, oh, Nvidia finally listened. Nvidia was... Guys, when Nvidia releases their Super series, typically it's because prices have come down to the point that it's actually cheaper to make the new thing. Remember, Blackwell came out at the beginning of this year. By early 2026, like, the yields will have improved with TSMC. They'll have had more time to stockpile better yields that they didn't use for something else. And RAM prices, they were hoping, would have come down. Like, at the start of Ampere, I believe RAM was like, and going all the way back 5 years, it was like $6 to $8 a gigabyte. Then it skyrocketed during shortages during COVID, but then it came down. About half a year ago, I was told RAM might be as low as like $2 to $5 a gigabyte. And so if you're Nvidia and you've watched RAM go from, like, let's say $6 a gigabyte to $2 a gigabyte, your yields improved. That's why you're releasing Super, because now it's actually cheaper to make this much better product. It's not like they're doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. So what I'm saying is, if the prices have gone up, that defeats the purpose for why they would release Super. They've never done this because they're saints, or they've done this because actually it's become cheaper, and then they do.
Yeah, they're a company. They're there to make money.
And then point number two, though, I want to get to. So Mark Cerny, Radeon's best engineer, writes in again. It says, what performance will the 9070 XTX or 9080 XT need to hit to keep up with momentum with Super? And what price do you think the sweet spot would need to be to keep consumers interested? So first of all, just to directly answer his question, and just to make sure everyone knows where this is coming from. I mean, I think I put out a leak during the summer where I heard in the labs from a couple, actually, I think it was 3 people, that AMD had some engineering samples that had GDDR7, that they were using, I think, another stepping of the die, or maybe like N4X, a slightly better version of 4 nanometer. And they might hit like 3.5 gigahertz or higher with GDDR7. And that could boost performance 30%. Yeah. But no one ever said it was actually coming out. If the Super series is canceled, I think that's canceled too. Like, there's no way, if Nvidia can't afford to launch a 24 gigabyte, 5080 Super, I think that means AMD certainly couldn't afford to launch a 32 gigabyte 9080 XT. I think, and I hope that's not true. I hope AMD has some super powerful card coming out, but wouldn't you agree, if Nvidia cancels GDDR7 cards, AMD probably would as well, or at least they're not going to be supplied nearly as much?
Well, speaking of maybe of a shareholder perspective, I would say that they would be pressing AMD to not release those cards. Mm-hmm. Now, seeing as a PR perspective, I would definitely pressure the company to do it. Definitely, because
from an AI perspective, you might want to, because you can also sell it as a 64 gigabyte AI card.
Exactly. And not only, I mean, you can just go there, for example, even in terms of gaming, in order to kind of try to grab more market share, you can just go, I mean, the 5080 is currently at around $1,000, possibly. I don't really know the prices in America in every single store, but I know it's around that, $1,000, sometimes even more. For example, in Portugal, it is still more expensive than that.
It's usually above MSRP, but finally you can sometimes find it for $1,000 now in the US.
And I mean, it's like $1,000, so it will get more expensive. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about, let's say, $1,200 in a couple of months. I suspect that will be the case. So again, $1,200 in a couple of months, or maybe more. Now, I mean, the 9070 XT is really close to the 5080 in some case scenarios, unless you overclock the 5080. Because let's be honest, the 5080 is an overclocking monster. Mm-hmm. You can push it like hell, and in some case scenarios, it will deliver a big performance uplift. I mean, for example, the Founders Edition that I have, it can do easily plus 300 megahertz more on the core. Mm-hmm. So it is doing a big difference, and the same goes for GDDR7. You can overclock it very well. It has like 10 to 20% difference depending on the game, usually at least 10%. Now, since they are really, really close, AMD could simply do something like, well, we have the 9070 XTX or the 9080 XT, whatever. It has GDDR7 still. We don't really have that many samples, but it is GDDR7. Instead of costing, let's say, $1,000, it costs $900. And guess what? It kind of matches, or in some cases outmatches the 5080.
I could see that, because going from GDDR6 to GDDR7 is a much larger boost in bandwidth than what the 5080 Super would get over the 50.
Yeah, and I mean, if they can actually do a better die, because if you go, for example, for the 9060 XT, the card can already do like 3.5 gigahertz if you tweak it. So I believe that an extremely well tweaked 9070 XT with a better subtract or a better node or so on most likely will achieve that. I mean, my card is one of the first versions of the 9070 XT. I mean, I had the card before it launched, so it is really an early sample. And the card with a small overclock can, in most cases, go like 3.3, close to 3.4. So I believe 3.5, 3.6 would be doable to some extent if the architecture allows it and if you give it enough power, of course.
Yeah, my 9070 XT was hitting 3.5 gigahertz in Battlefield 6. I was blown away. I was like, wait, what? It's getting, I overclocked it, but in some games it goes really hot.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be doable, like 5080 performance, really close, or in some cases even better, especially in more CPU bound scenarios, even better, considerably better. So I mean, why not? AMD could deliver a card that was almost equal or better than the 5080, depending on the scenario, and still cheaper, and with double the VRAM. So it's a win-win-win situation.
See, I think at a minimum, even if they don't launch the GDDR7 version, they should do a refresh, because like you just said, I think maybe even a stepping, like even if it doesn't have GDDR7, they should do a new iteration of it that just is the best yields, maybe a slight, kind of like Phoenix to Hawk Point tweaks for like better voltage binning, or maybe higher voltage binning, so that it's targeting
basically
a higher
small
clock.
Architecture.
Yeah, like just minor tweaks to like what the target voltage is to be higher. I don't even think they would need GDDR7 they could just more power and 3.5 gigahertz. They could squeeze out another 15%, and you could call that the 9080 XT. And by the way, if it used GDDR6, you could give it 32 gigabytes, and you could surprise Nvidia, because Nvidia could not respond to that easily. And that's something Nvidia can't do. Nvidia has to use GDDR7. So if they launched a 9080 XT 3.5 gigahertz, still with GDDR6 32 gigabyte card, I actually think that might be the Galaxy Brain move. Although I certainly hope they still launch some crazy, GDDR7 version, because I think if they could get even a 24 gigabyte card out that matched the 4090 for under $1,000, that's sort of the type of enthusiast product everyone's been waiting for. And if Nvidia delayed or canceled Super, they would just have, I think, the exact thing people have wanted in the high end for a while. People don't need a $3,000 5090, right? No one needs 32 gigabytes of RAM, but a lot of people would like a 24 gigabyte card with 4090 performance for half the price of what the 4090 was.
I don't really know if that's possible, because, well, it can be
close
possible,
to it, not the exact, but yeah.
But I mean, if we're talking about RDNA 4, I believe that they would need way more bandwidth to go over the 64 compute units. So if we're talking about, let's say, maybe like 80 compute units, which is the usual numbers for the 6950 XT. I don't really know if it has 80 or 84. I don't really remember.
Oh, no, I don't think they would. They wouldn't add anything. From what I was told, it'd still be 64 compute units.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm really talking, if you want to go like to 4090 levels of performance, you need more computer units. You can not just go with the GDDR7 and the frequency. It just won't happen. Like, impossible.
Have you tested it above like liquid nitrogen? Because the 4090 is only, I want to be clear too. I should back up. In 8K, the 4090 would still win. But I don't know if you've noticed how many times the 9070 XT beats the 5080 in high refresh rates, if you're in 1440p, I think just a 30% boost would be enough to beat pretty much everything in 1440p and lower, because Nvidia has massive CPU overhead issues in a lot of games. But yes, in 4K Ultra with ray tracing, I think the 4090 would still win. But most people game in 1440p, so I think that could be an easy,
I mean,
win.
I'm just kind of targeting a normal GPU heavy scenario, and in that scenario, the 4090 is still much faster than the XTX, and still much faster than the 9070 XT. So I would look at if RDNA 4 had something like 80 compute units with 384 bit, or maybe just GDDR7 with still 256-bit, but with 32 gigabytes, I believe it could reach the 4090 level of performance. Again, in GPU-bound scenarios.
Yeah.
Because if we're talking about any other thing, because you can be completely GPU-bound at 1440p.
Yeah. I don't know, though. I'm just looking at even an overkill in 1440p in Battlefield 6.
Yeah, that's a different scenario, though. Battlefield 6, like Call of Duty, really likes the AMD GPUs. Sure,
especially
RDNA 4.
You got to admit, if you could market it faster than a 4090 in Battlefield 6, that's quite a coup. But yeah, like there will certainly be games where Nvidia still wins. But yeah, so
but I mean, there are things AMD can do, but I believe they should kind of do a small refresh on the RDNA 4 cards, definitely maybe with more VRAM, and focus on the next generation to kind of go above the 5090 if they can. I believe it's very important if they can go at least above the 4090, which I believe they will. But if they can go above the 5090, it will be a very, very good mark, because if AMD really wants to take market share, if they do a GPU that is, I was going to say affordable, but everything is really, really expensive now.
It's all relative,
but at least affordable in quotes, and maybe, let's say, maybe 4090, in between 4090 and 5090, I believe that AMD would sell a lot.
So let's bring up RDNA 5 though, because just because you did, I think there's no doubt in my mind RDNA 5 is gonna, unless something changes, but like that they're gonna crush the 5090. I mean, the target's eyes, I mean, they're going to hundreds of compute units, GDDR7 and fast GDDR7 apparently, 384-bit buses, like, so I don't think there's any worry about that.
But is it MCM though, or is it monolithic?
Right. Actually, this is fun. The way it works is it is multiple dies, but the way the Medusa family for Zen 6, the way RDNA 5 works is they both share chiplets with each other. So there's going to be compute chiplets and then media dies, and that's it. And what that allows them to do is AT4 is the budget graphics card. Honestly, probably more similar to like a 6500 XT. Like this will be like your $300 to $50 card. That's going to have, what was it? I forgot the amount of, I think 24 compute units of RDNA 5. And then it can add like an HDMI out die that's very small. Or you can take that chiplet and add it to Little Medusa Halo. And then that's a laptop APU.
Yeah, I also heard you talking about the LPDDR5X or LPDDR.
Yeah, which, by the way, will be another advantage versus NVIDIA if there's shortages, although I don't know AI is using that for some of their chips. But so for the very top AT0 die, with the hundreds of compute units, I guess if I'm thinking about this, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that also will have a media die and then some mega like 750 millimeter squared chiplet. So it technically will use chiplets, but not like RDNA 3.
Yeah, we're talking about something like the Zen architecture, right? Mm-hmm. Like media die separated on the CPUs. We have the I/O, the input outputs,
and but the I/O is still on the compute units. So the I/O die,
on the GPUs. Okay.
Yeah. So the only thing they would use the media die for is HDMI out. Like that's all it's for, and that's so they can take it off and also put it on an APU.
So no hardware and no hardware encode and decode on the media die.
Oh no, that probably be there too.
Oh
yeah. So that but nothing with like GDDR7 controllers or the compute units. So that's
everything on the other die, on the big one.
Yeah, and that should help with the latency issues.
Latency,
had. So, and that's why the low end cards have LPDDR5X, because they're actually meant to be used with laptops for like a laptop APU. But I think that's exciting because that means they could give you like 128 gigabyte like budget graphics cards. They won't,
Yeah, cheap.
but they might make them for AI cards or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts really about RDNA 5. I think it's very exciting. I don't think it's that surprising that it would be powerful either. The last time AMD truly challenged Nvidia on the high end was RDNA 2, and RDNA 2 was in the PlayStation 5. So it would make sense that they would go all out when they have an architecture being used by Xbox and PlayStation again, because they know it's going to get a ton of support.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with AMD is that they made a couple of bad decisions along the years, and sometimes they do make good decisions, sometimes they don't. I believe that going with kind of a mid to high tier RDNA 4 was a good decision, at least at the beginning. But now they need to do something better, at least in between RDNA 4 and RDNA 5. Again, at least some refresh. They have been going very, very strong on the APU side, very, very strong. On the handheld devices as well. So I believe that they can do something similar for the next generation GPUs. But again, they need to move faster with the software. It's always the same. They have the hardware, the engineers, they're doing their jobs, and the software team sometimes just they can just do more. They can't do more because it's humanly impossible. And they need more people. They need more, generally more money going there in order to make things move faster. It's not about the quality, because when they deliver, they can deliver pretty good things. It's about the time that it takes to deliver something. Usually, that's what I think, at least.
Yeah, and this is something I've talked about before, but it's probably worth bringing up again. I had heard that from like 2023 through when would that have, like 2020, late 2022 through like early 2024, there was a large burnout issue with AMD where they were still acting like they were a scrappy underdog and expecting people to work weekends. And for the most part, they said they were happier employees to work there maybe than Intel, but Nvidia was getting cushy. Nvidia expected you to work very hard, but if you wanted to take off a weekend, you got to take the time off. They would give you time to finish things. They weren't afraid to push back launches. And the reason we saw so much sloppiness with like RDNA 3 and FSR 1 to a degree with Zen 5 and as well is because those were the echoes of about 1 to 1.5 year period where they had burnout and a lot of turnover. Like people were leaving AMD for Nvidia. I mean, I know several people that were AMD contacts of mine that are now contacts of other companies. They've fixed that by now. But I think it's worth telling everyone that like a big reason AMD was so sloppy in 2022 through 2024 was that they had a lot of people leaving the company and there was a lot of turnover, and supposedly they've slowed down a bit. So my hope would be, especially with RDNA 5 going in everything, I mean, it will go into APUs, it'll go into PS6, Xbox, presumably I would think the next Steam Deck, that's going to be a big package where they will put all of their effort into it, right? And I would just say in the future, and maybe this is what they did with RDNA 4, all right, if you want to do one big launch where you take the performance crown from NVIDIA just every 5 years because it's a new console launch, do that, and then stop trying to make other things do more than you can support. Again, I think that's what you're seeing with like RDNA 4 not going for the high end. Yeah. They realize their limitations.
And I mean, in terms of people, they really need to bring more people to the mix, especially now. From what I understand, they have 2 separate teams. Previously, they had the driver teams, and now they have a team specifically for FSR4.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so they need more people to fill in the gaps since they are kind of dividing things, and that's a great thing. But they need people just for the drivers, enough people for everything to work kind of smooth, and then enough people as well for the FSR4 side. And sometimes that doesn't really happen, and that's why we see what we see. I mean, besides they not being able to get enough employees, I see no absolute reason for them to not have enough people working there, especially since they have the money right now.
Well, and here's the good news. AT2, like the 9070 XT successor die or configuration with RDNA 5. That will also be used with the next gen Xbox. And what that means is AMD can't screw around. Like with RDNA 5, like Sony's going to demand it's good, and Microsoft is going to demand that the drivers work on their hybrid console. So at a minimum, what I would say is RDNA 5 kind of can't be good because so many stakeholders are invested in it that it's going to have to get everything right. And I think right now they're just still kind of winding up into that. Although I agree with you, they should try to launch some 9080 XT to get hype going before RDNA 5.
Exactly my point. Again, PR. But that involves so many things. I know it does.
It's not like they just can do it. I understand it's hard.
Yeah, I mean the PR just should have thought about it before, and maybe they did. Maybe they talked internally. Well, should we do it? Should we not do it? Do we have the things needed? Don't we really have the things needed? I mean, maybe they talked about it, but I believe that they should keep the hype. They should just deliver people what they want, and people will buy their GPUs next time.
All right, so I want to move on to a little bit of CPU talk here because I think this is a very good question. Once again, I guess, from Mark Cerny, Radeon's best engineer. He writes in and says,
this piece of content is brought to you by CDkeyoffer.com. CDkeyoffer.com is the best place to get reasonably priced Microsoft operating systems and Office products. And they've been a key sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead, if you can believe it, for over 5 years. And they've remained a key sponsor for all of that time because they've just been reliable. I've used them for practically every PC build I've done throughout all that time. My family members use them. My friends use them. Like, no joke. I have friends reach out like every month, like, hey, I'm building a PC. What's that Office website you use? And I say CDkeyoffer.com. And I say the same thing to the Moore's Law is Dead community. No complaints. The tens of thousands, or really hundreds of thousands of Moore's Law Z fans have been using them for all this time as well, with no complaints. So if you are looking to get fairly priced Microsoft software, go to CDkeyoffer.com during their Black Friday super sale. This is where you can get the best prices, and if you do, make sure you use offer code BrokenSilicon for 25% off all Microsoft products, and then Die Shrink for 3% off everything else on the website, because they do sell games as well. You should check them out for that too. And one more time, thanks, after dozens of ads with them, some holding a dog, some not holding a dog, and check them out. CDkeyoffer.com. I should put my dog down because I don't know how much longer I can get her to behave like this. Although maybe it'll be a long time. She is kind of a baby.
AMD's technical marketing director said that AM4 will be supported for as long as DDR4 does not cost more to produce than DDR5. Looking at memory prices now, because of AI 10 years after launch, it is finally time to say goodbye, don't you think? Especially with CPUs like the 9500F and 7500X3D bringing good budget offerings to AM5 at the same time. Does recommending AM4 even for a budget build make sense? So I think what I would say is, like you said, never say never. Like if you see a 5700 XT for $120 and a good deal on DDR4, sure, you can do AM4. But I do think at this point, for the most part, I would say we're now in the era of AM5, and I would just kind of recommend AM5 for almost everything.
Yeah, if we take off the DDR5 prices. But yeah, generally, yes. I would say so. And AM4 would be only for the extremely budget builds, like low budget builds. Like if we're talking about something like, well, I just want something to browse the web, play League of Legends or Valorant or something. Just give me something that works, but is really, really cheap. AM4 does the job. I mean, you can get like a $30 or $40 motherboard, really, really cheap RAM. Then you put let's say 5700X, or 5700. I mean, really, really, really cheap. Like you can get some for $80. Like the 5700, I saw it once for $80. I mean, it's still 8 core, 16 threads. I mean, it's slow, but I mean, it's really, really cheap. So if you're going for ultra budget, that's the way to go. If you're going for, let's say, something kind of mid-low tier or low to mid tier, Yeah, AM5 is definitely the way to go. I mean, you can find AM5 motherboards now at $100, $120. So there's no reason to go AM4 when with an AM5 motherboard, you can use like 3 or 4 generation of CPUs as well.
Yeah, and I would also say that, I mean, the previous system I had, actually the motherboard's still here. I had a 3950X upgraded to a 5950X. I used that until the middle of last year. Or is it the middle of this year? Maybe it's the middle of this year. And I got from Mini's Forum, a 7945HX3D motherboard. So technically it's a mobile CPU, but it's a 100 watt 16 core.
With the Radeon 780M, right?
Yeah. No, it's the 16 core. So this is the 16 core mobile version of what's on desktop anyway. So it's basically a 7950X3D and everything but name only, but it's soldered onto the board.
No, I'm talking about the integrated graphics. It's the Radeon 780M, I believe. 780M.
No, this would have the 2 compute unit one because it's a 16 core.
Oh, we're talking about the CPU.
Yeah, the Dragon range.
So it's basically a mobile part, but without the normal. Okay, I see.
Yeah, I mean it's technically
because the one that I sorry, Tom. Because the one that I have, I believe it's the 7940HS, and that one has the Radeon 780M.
This is the 45 HX, so this is analogous to like the extreme Intel CPUs. It's laptop, but it's not laptop. And so it is basically a 7950X3D, but it's soldered to the motherboard, and it's 100 watts instead of 200 watts. Still runs at 5.2 gigahertz.
Oh, I see.
But I will say, even that, and this isn't even Zen 5, the snappiness between Zen 3 and Zen 4 and 5, it's actually surprisingly noticeable. So that's what I would say too, is like if you're like, oh, I'm going to save $40 going with a 5800X3D on eBay system instead of going with a 9700. I will say that 9700, Windows boots up instantly. Like everything I click is open before I swear I clicked on it. Like there is a snappiness difference between AM4 and AM5, or should I say Zen 4 and Zen 5 systems.
And even in terms of performance, general performance, I tested before, and in general scenarios, the 5800X 3D and the 7700X, as soon as you overclock the 7700X, the performance would be very close in most games. And the 9700X is, again, if overclocked, equal or better than the 7700X. This is kind of one of those things like the Zen 5%, because since the 9700X is only a 65 watts package, and the 7700X, the 7700X goes up to 105. In some really heavy games, the 7700X would be faster than the 9700X. And I know because I tested it. It's on my videos. For example, in Starfield, that uses like 80, 90, 100 watts of the CPU sometimes if you have a GPU powerful enough to push it. What happens is that, in that case scenario, for example, the 7700X will be faster. But as soon as you remove the power limits of the 9700X, it will be faster because the architecture is better and the frequency and so on.
Yeah, by like 5% though, right? Or like pretty much. But either way though, it's like they just are quite a bit faster than Zen 3 X3D actually.
Definitely.
Especially in the newer games. Like it's you would think it won't be noticeable, and I was like, whoa, this is quite a bit and with how old AM4 is, that's, you know, and with the fact that Zen 6 and Zen 7 are going to be on AM5, like you said, unless you're going ultra budget, I don't really think you get AM4 most of the time anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently retesting all the CPUs that I have. I tested one CPU that is coming out in a couple of days, Ryzen 1. Then I retested the 7800X 3D, and I am now testing the 9900X 3D. Then I'm going to go to the 7600X, 7600X 3D, whatever. My point being, I retested the 7800X 3D that I tested before, like 1 year ago, and in some case scenarios with the same exact GPU, with the same 7800X 3D, nothing really changed, and the performance increased in the same games. So in some games it did, like one of the games that I test, which is an Unreal Engine 5 game, and the game didn't get updated.
Mhm.
And yet the CPU performance is considerably better, like 10-15%,
Mm.
which is a lot. So in some case scenarios, things are improving even for older architectures because Windows, chipset drivers, games, motherboard BIOS, everything is working better, everything is being optimized. So this will be start getting noticed more and more with Zen 5. And from my own testing at release, I saw around 10% performance difference, not 5, 10, but again, OC versus OC.
Mm-hmm.
Stock versus stock, it was indeed the 5%.
Zen 5 can push. You're saying if you remove power limits, Zen 5 stretches further than Zen 4.
Not all, but the 65 watts chips,
Right,
definitely.
Okay. Mark Cerny writes in again and says the best part of the 9950X3D2 that's rumored to be coming out and the 9850X3D is I think the price drop of the 9800X3D. Maybe they might just discontinue it. If Zen 6 gets delayed, do you think the market will be okay with just having an ultra fast refresh of Zen 5 X3D while they wait? My answer is actually yes. And to recap everybody, a while ago, I put out this leak where I had documents showing N2X for Zen 6. And then recently, TSMC basically announced N2X is delayed. So I think there's a chance desktop Zen 6 slips to early 2027. We'll see. From what I've heard this week, too, I've heard more people suggest that that could definitely happen. But in the meantime, the 9950X3D2 is coming, and I think that could add another 5 to 10% performance, maybe more in edge cases. And I think that might be enough to match Nova Lake in gaming. We'll see. I wonder what you think, because as long as the 9950X3D2 is noticeably faster than the 9950X3D and it's easy to get, I actually think most people will be fine with that. But I wonder what you think.
I mean, why people would want more, to be honest. I mean, unless Intel brings something really, really relevant to the table, why would they want more if they already have the best? They'll just wait for something better. So if Intel delivers something similar, and maybe with the socket support for the years to come, the next years to come, maybe people will switch because people might be wanting something different. And if it is better, especially if it is better, Intel was always known to have lower latencies. For example, the idle power draw is better, especially on the desktop side because of the IOs being different. But now they are changing that as well. So we don't really know what will come. But people can actually just change to be different. I don't really know. What I do know is, again, what I told you before. If they already have the best, why wouldn't they wait? I mean, it makes no sense. Of course they will wait. And to be honest, most people have strong enough CPUs and it's all kind of placebo effect. They are testing a better CPU. Oh, this is so much better. Now just take off the FPS counter and tell me which one is better. They just can tell. Even if you're running a 540 hertz display, most people can tell because a 10% difference is not really noticeable.
Don't you think that means? Don't you think that means though that AMD is probably safe versus Nova Lake unless Nova Lake is insanely better? Because all of our games right now, if you have a 9800X3D, you can run every game at like 200-300 frames per second. It's not like you need more performance, right? So, I mean, unless Nova Lake is magic, I think that AMD probably doesn't feel like they need to rush Zen 6 because Nova Lake's going to cost a lot more money too. And even if it has longevity, and I've been told it will last a few, generations on their next platform. Like, I still think a lot of people would go, yeah, but I still need to buy a new motherboard. Zen 6 is coming. Yeah. I don't think AMD needs much. Yeah, to work. Unless Nova Lake ends up beating Zen 5 X3D by like 30%. I don't think it will, but it would have to be quite a win, I think, to make AMD worry about delaying Zen 6.
Yeah, and I believe one of the things that could really lead to both AMD or Intel really bringing something interesting would be on the, let's say, games that are really, really CPU heavy. And I'm not saying CPU dependent. I'm really saying CPU heavy because there are games that are CPU dependent. And to be honest, most people won't really care going from 200 to 300 FPS if the gameplay is smooth. most of the people will just lock the frames to lower values in order to have lower power consumption and still have everything inside the FreeSync range. Now, when we're talking about really, really CPU heavy games like City Skylines 2, for example, like city builders and so on, those are really heavy on the CPU. And we're talking about drops to, let's say, like 50, 40 FPS. And if somehow any CPU that would be released either from Intel or AMD could be able to do something specific in those case scenarios, like, okay, this is running at 40 FPS, but with this new generation, the latencies were severely reduced, or we are again like the X3D2, I believe. So we are having dual CCDs and double the cache. So we are going from 40 to 70 FPS in this specific scenario. Now, that would be massive, and that would sell.
I play Age of Empires 4, and when I start games, it runs at like 130 frames per second or whatever I want. But by the end of the game, it does typically drop to like you said, 70, 80 frames per second.
Same for Crusader Kings 3, exactly the same. So if you're playing those games, a lot of CPU power is needed, and in those case scenarios, if they were able to improve the performance in those case scenarios, I believe it would sell. But generally, in terms of high FPS numbers, I believe that we're getting to a point where it doesn't really matter anymore. It will matter in a couple of years because frame generation is getting better, and then we are having higher refresh rate panels more and more. Idiot things like 1000 hertz are being released.
And 720p if you want to do that. Yeah,
720p and so on. I believe going as low as 1080p is kind of acceptable. 720p is like pushing it. Like, just stop. Enough. But yeah, I mean, for now, I believe that that's what they should be focusing on, like those games or those applications where the performance is really, really needed. They should focus on that. Now, how would they do it? I don't know. I'm not an engineer. But I believe that from a market perspective, that would be it. But again, I'm deviating.
No, this is fine. I mean, my biggest concern, though, with Nova Lake is if AMD, and it sounds like they will, right? If AMD does release a 9950 X3D2 at CES, and I don't know, let's say it turns out that putting V-cache on both of the dies actually makes a pretty big difference in a few games, and it's enough that it averages 10% faster than the 9950 X3D. I know that like 10% doesn't really matter. The 9800 X3D is plenty fast. Who cares? But right now, at least in the averages I've seen on like Hardware Unboxed, AMD is like 35% ahead of Intel in gaming. If you had another 10% on that, you're getting to like 40% or more ahead of Intel. And I feel like if AMD could launch that for even $700 before Nova Lake comes out, Nova Lake looks like it's going to be very expensive. It uses 2 nanometer. It's got all these tiles. I think what Nova Lake needs to worry about is AMD might just gobble up all of the enthusiast market through 2026. And then if Nova Lake comes out and it's like 10% faster, does anyone really care if they all just bought these cheaper AMD CPUs? And that's kind of what happened with Alder Lake. Alder Lake, Intel produced too much of it. They thought it was going to take back the whole market, but it turned out that like I actually liked Alder Lake a lot. I did recommend it over Zen 3.
Same.
But most people didn't. Most people just bought Zen 3 because it was cheaper and they didn't care that Alder Lake was like 15% faster or something.
I believe that Intel needs to focus now on the mid to low tier. To be honest, that's my opinion. The high tier is for, or the enthusiast level is for AMD right now. So they need to deliver something good on the enthusiast level. They don't need really to be the best. Something just good. And then they just kind of scrap out all the remaining market share from AMD on the mid to low tier. That's what they did with 10th, 11th, and 12th series. Because AMD had nothing really affordable on that regard. They had, like, for example, the Ryzen 5000 series, the Ryzen 5500 and 5300, I believe, something like that. They came like many years after the Ryzen.
And you had those 6-core i5s that were great.
Yeah, I mean, really, really great. And like for example, the 10400F, the 10100F, the i3, the i5, they were great and much better than the offerings that AMD had and much cheaper. So it was a win-win. And I believe that Intel needs to do the same right now. So focus on the market that AMD doesn't really have. Because if you go, let's say, for the let's say 9600X, 9500F isn't a thing yet, but the 7500F and so on. I mean, I can see Intel easily going up and kind of sweeping AMD on that tier, on that CPU tier, easily.
See, here's my concern though with Nova Lake long term when it comes to this is I don't know if you've seen my Nova Lake leak. You probably did, but the one where they have like these two like 144 megabyte cache dies.
Yeah.
Massive. I mean, we're talking about something that's kind of like an HEDT 52 core with hundreds of megabytes of cache. That will probably compete with AMD's top end to a degree. Okay, it looks expensive and really powerful, but
most likely win in multi-threading.
Yeah, but especially against Zen 5, will crush Zen 5 in multi-threading. But my concern is they're not giving big last level cache to a lot of the cheaper ones, and maybe it doesn't need it. I don't know. Maybe it's only like I guess to be fair, in the benchmarks I saw, it's only like a 20%, 10% boost, but. The problem with that is if Intel has this like $1,000 52 core, and then let's say they have like a 32 core, I don't know what it will be, right? Like Ultra 7 for 600, and then they have like an Ultra 5 that still has the cache for 350. AMD can still have the 9850X 3D. I know that they charge like $400 to $500 for these things, but they're like really cheap to make. Like these CPUs AMD's selling are like they're getting away with murder with these tiny dies that they just throw cash on and make a bunch of money off of. My concern is like all AMD really has to do though to beat the Nova Lake i5 that will cost twice as much to make is launch a 9650X 3D, and boom, they just win gaming. And this was something pointed out by James Pryor, who used to work at AMD and their segmentation and make decisions like for what things would cost and what they would be named. And he said, he always brings up these very insightful points about how to position things. He says, I know the i5 might have 8 little cores, but if you're someone buying a CPU for $300, do you want 14 cores or do you want to win gaming by 20%? Because the people that want more cores are the ones buying the $700 CPUs.
Yeah.
And so that's my concern with Nova Lake, especially when Zen 6 comes out and I know that I just leaked Zen 7 will have a budget die. My concern is that Intel's like all AMD has to do to keep winning at $300 in gaming is launch these cheap 8 cores that Intel continues to not really compete with by launching these expensive to make like little core CPUs, you know?
I mean, that's always an option because AMD does have lots of options on that regard, and they stated several times that they do have bigger margin on the CPU side than on the GPU side. So, I mean, they can just lower prices and still get away with it. Definitely. I mean, the thing is that Intel can still get its own market share if AMD doesn't go full 3D cache on the whole lineup. Mm-hmm. Until AMD does that, yeah, I believe that they can still get away with it. Again, because to be honest, games are starting to use more and more threads, more and more cores, and yeah, I mean it's the numbers. People that don't really know about tech, they look at one CPU and look at the other. Well, this has 16 cores or 16 threads. Well, most stores will just say 16 cores, whatever. So it has 16 cores and this one has 24. So this one is better. More is better. And that's what will happen. Intel will still have its place, especially until AMD goes full 3D cache on every single CPU of the lineup.
But isn't that funny, though? Because they still haven't. That's the thing I keep pointing out to people, too. Is anyone who thinks, like, guys, the 9950X 3D2, Leo from Kit Guru backed this up. He said he had heard this as well. That's existed since Q1. They just didn't launch it. Like if AMD
because they don't need it.
They don't need like, and so that's my concern with like Nova Lake is they have this really expensive mega chip. If AMD wants to, they can have Zen 6 have Vcache all the way down the lineup and it will be cheaper than Intel.
I mean, from the moment that we learned about 3D cache, what was the first CPU that you saw with 3D cache?
Yeah, the 5800X 3D, and we never got. What do you mean? Go on.
5950X 3D. That was the first one that was shown by Lisa Su.
Oh, she held it up?
Yep.
Let me see.
She had that one like there. That was the presented one, the one in the presentation. It had two CCDs.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, she did.
So that was the CPU that was going to be released. But I believe that AMD saw something like, well, for this one, this will be way harder to make because it's the first iteration of X3D. Then maybe it will be way more expensive. And if we are aiming this at the gamers, we need to make it more affordable. So they went with the 8 cores, 16 threads because it didn't have the latency of the CCD. So they didn't have to worry about chipset drivers and so on. And at the same time, it would be cheaper and, more spreadable, let's call it that. But the first one was the 5950X 3D that was never released.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do know they had it in their labs too. I think Gamers Nexus was there and they held it up. And this is another interesting thing about the 9950X 3D too. If it comes out and, it's supposedly 200 watts, and it's 3% faster than the 9950X 3D in games, that means it's just because it's being clocked higher. And it's well, whatever. But if we find out it's 10% faster and there's some games where there's a big difference, that means AMD lied this whole time because they said to Gamers Nexus, oh, we tried putting Vcache on them and it didn't make a difference. And I was always thinking, I bet it makes a difference sometimes. I bet it does make a difference sometimes.
I bet it does. And one of the games will be Spider-Man 2. Sign me in. Spider-Man 2 will have a difference. Definitely, 100% sure.
Techno writes in and says, what would it take for AMD to put Zen 8 on AM5? They won't.
Yeah, I actually had to think about it Zen 8. Yeah, that won't happen. That won't happen, definitely.
Now, I just put out some documents that show Zen 7 will, but I don't think that's that crazy. I mean, AMD doubled core count with Zen 1 to Zen 3, technically to Zen 2. And they use DDR4, and it was fine. And because of Vcache, if there's bandwidth issues, they can just throw Vcache on the lineup, and they'll make up for Zen 7. But Zen 8, I don't think there's any chance they bother putting Zen 8 on AM5. In fact, I already think it's crazy that they put Zen 7 on AM5. But maybe it's because of DDR6 being too expensive because of AI. There's a chance. That'd be the only way they would do it, is if they find out that you'll never be able to get DDR6 in consumer motherboards.
I mean it's already crazy to think that the first iteration of Zen wasn't supposed to be the first iteration. The first iteration was supposed to be basically Zen 1 was supposed to be what Zen 3 was. Mm-hmm. Zen 2, sorry. Zen 1. Yeah. And they just didn't have the money. They were running out of money and they had to release it. And in between this time, AMD evolved so much because they thought of the long run. They were well, if this works, this will work for a long time. And we will be able to keep improving upon this design year after year after year. And that will be the, how should I say it in English? The golden egg chicken.
That'll be the golden goose.
Golden goose. Okay.
There's a few ways you could put it, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be the best thing that they could do, and Intel needs to think the same way. And they were kind of playing the banjo for a long time. They were there. They were just kidding around, spending money here and there, because when you have lots of money, you don't really care about where you spend it. But when the money goes short, you'll start cutting here, there, and that's what happened with Intel. They thought they would never lose the edge, and they did. And now they need to think of the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, and two things too about Zen 7 that I was thinking about the other day. Just walking my dog, other things that I, because I put out this big video Friday, but extra things that I think should maybe be pointed out. The performance of going from Zen 4 to Zen 7 is going to be comical. If you think about it, Zen 7's going to 32 cores. Those cores will be 20% faster than Zen 6. Nothing that crazy there. But if you think about that, Zen 6 will, though, be 20% faster than Zen 5, which is 10% faster than Zen 4. And you add it all up. So take Zen 4, or even Zen 5, really, double the core count. All right, now you're to 100% more multi-threading performance. And then assume the cores are 50% faster, because they probably will be. That means that Zen 7 in multi-threading could be triple the performance of Zen 5. And if
in the same motherboard.
And if that's true, that means what is it called? The 99 like 80X Threadripper might have the same multi-threading performance as the Zen 7 AM5 flagship. Now, to be fair, the Zen 3 flagship beat, Zen Plus 32 core or something, or came close to multi-threading. So we've seen stuff like this before, but that's actually going to be a ridiculously shocking uplift. But at the same time, again, though, Zen 5 was almost like Zen Plus. I hate to say it. If you really think about it, there was Zen 1, Zen Plus,
was
Zen
a small
2.
refresh.
Zen 5 ultimately was about a similar performance uplift as what we got from Zen Plus, at least in gaming in a lot of scenarios. In multi-threading, it was probably more. But I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing that we had better was the AI performance.
Yeah, substantially better. And I think long term we'll find that Zen 5 has aged quite a bit better than Zen 4. But if you just think of it in terms of Zen Plus, it really isn't that surprising, though. You have 4 generations of chips, just like 4 generations on AM4. Then again, and no, I don't think they will have 5. I don't think we will get Zen 8 on AM5. That would be, unless something has gone wrong at AMD. I don't know.
I believe you're right. Yeah.
All right. So HMS writes in and says, "Hey, Tom, you mentioned on the last Broken Silicon that people are benchmarking Strix Halo 388 and 392 APUs. Yeah, that was on Geekbench. A 388 showed up. So that's an 8-core with 40 compute units. This is incredibly exciting. When do you think major laptop partners will release these APUs to the market? Also, does this mean there won't be RDNA 4 Strix Halo? Well, no, there never was going to be. And late 2026 and early 2027 is a long ways to still be stuck on RDNA 3.5. Well, look, first of all, I don't know what to tell you. RDNA 3.5 is what's going to be in APUs for another year, at least. But,
I mean, it's on PS5 Pro, so
yeah, it's
not entirely, but yeah,
mostly that. Yeah, like that. It is what it is. But I wonder what you think about this, because you said you tested Strix Halo, and I know it's been expensive to get up until now, but I've long said that
still expensive.
It is, but it's come down in price on some of them because it started at like $4,000, but it's not saying much. But I do believe that by mid next year, it will be a lot cheaper, though. And I think that what we've seen is the premium models launch first because they had no competition from Nvidia or Intel. And that when you see them preparing a 388, so an 8-core with all of the compute units, I think they're preparing gaming laptop versions.
Yeah, I mean the $4,000 is like at least 4 minimum wages in Portugal. So, and lots of people get the minimum wage. So you see, this one that I got from Billing, which is the GTR 9 Pro, costs like $2,000, close to $2,000. And I mean, of course, it's expensive. I mean, it's a mini computer. The temperatures are crazy good. You have 128 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah, and it's unified.
Unified, exactly. That's why it's expensive, because they need to get the full chip with 120.
I mean, this is something Apple would charge $5,000 for.
Yeah, so. Easily. And I mean, you can just go get. I tested some games because I have a 4K monitor connected. I tested some games at 4K, and I used the FSR 4 Int 8 model to performance, and it looked great, and it performed exceptionally well in some titles. Like, I'm not joking, exceptionally well, like 100 FPS.
Yeah.
Not something like, well, it performed well like 30 or even 60 FPS. No, really, really well, even with an unsupported model of FSR 4. So it brings a really, really good performance. I mean, some games I even played at 4K native.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And it was delivering like 60 FPS. Depending on the game, there are some games that needed more bandwidth, and in those games, of course, it would fall to the ground. But in some games that didn't really require that much bandwidth, it just ran well at 4K, and I was like, what the hell?
And the stability is like, and it's so quick and snappy because it's an APU, so everything's closer together.
Unified, yeah, definitely. So I'm just impressed. So if they can pick this up and they say something like, well, now we did the let's say not the enthusiast,
the AI prosumer.
The AI prosumer, and at the same time the developer side, everything, because anyone can just work with this.
Basically, every developer I know was like, I'm buying Strix Halo, and I don't care if it's $5,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for developers. I mean, we have this side. This side gives us money, maybe the higher profit, I would say. So now let's go to the gaming market, and that's where how was it called? Like it's still the 8060 integrated graphics, but instead of 395, it's 385 or 388.
It'll be 388. Yeah. And I think that will go into more like $1,500 gaming laptops against the 5060.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a good choice.
Yeah. And I mean, gaming wise, the performance will be exactly the same. Exactly the same. And I mean, if priced correctly, it would be a massive uplift when it comes to mobile performance, because at, let's say, 120 watts or 100 watts, you can have a system performing so good, really so good that it's just nearly perfect. You don't really need discrete graphics, mobile graphics, nothing. Just you have everything on one side and it just works.
Yeah, I've never had less bugs or had Windows faster than the Strix Halo laptop I've been using. It's just, everything is just instant. Everything works. There's games crash less often. So if they, and actually in my testing, I had the 390, so the 32 compute unit model with 12 cores. In my testing, it was as good as a 4060. I understand there's some games where it's not, but
I'll be testing that soon, by the way. I first did the gameplay benchmarks. Now I'm going to do the GPU comparisons. And to be honest, there are some things that AMD needs to fix. Because I noticed that with Strix Halo, there are some games where the shadows don't really work properly. They just don't. For example, Silent Hill 2, the shadows won't render.
Silent Hill 2, that game also had issues with like shadows on PS5 Pro. It seems like a bit of a pattern there. Yeah. Well, PSR, it's because of PSSR specifically, they think. But that's
in this case scenario, it's really just on Strix Halo, and the shadows. I tried everything, newer drivers, older drivers. The only thing that works is ray tracing, because ray tracing forces another entirely different thing, and it works. For example, Mafia: The Old Country, also the same. It just doesn't render the occlusion and the shadows.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I saw anything like that. The closest thing I found was, I think it was Call of Duty Black Ops 6 in the campaign. I don't think in the multiplayer. There were some scenarios where it seems like there were extra artifacts if you had FSR 3 on. I thought that was odd.
That's usual. That's usual, yeah. But at least, yeah, I believe that on the 65 games that I tested, most likely more, close to 70, I believe it was like Silent Hill 2, Mafia: The Old Country, and there were maybe like 2 more games where those issues appeared, but everything was fine, everything else.
You know, this also makes me realize, like, now again, it's obvious they would focus on prosumer developers, AI first, because that's going to make them more money. But also, if reasonably priced Strix Halo laptops for gamers specifically come out early to mid next year, that's when FSR 4 will be officially supported on these laptops too.
Yeah.
And there's a chance they may have thought they would be uncompetitive with NVIDIA's 4060, 5060 laptops unless they had FSR 4 support on them. And so now Definitely. They will. That could be another reason they were waiting to do that.
The same for handheld devices.
Yes, exactly. So that's further reason for that, I think. All right. I have one more question here, and actually it is a voicemail. So let me play that now.
This question is for Fabio, but Tom, you can chime in as well. I have been daily driving 4K to 40 hertz with HDR 1000 turned on. My question to you guys is this. Have any of you noticed a larger generational uplift in fidelity, especially when playing older games at native on these newer generations of GPUs from about RDNA 2 onwards? If so, doesn't it seem like the image comes through more clearer and sharper? Thanks.
So all I would say is I've just noticed every generation pretty much, with the exception of Pascal and Maxwell, which did a lot of color compression and sometimes did, I think, make the image a little worse. But Turing and onwards, I would say Vega and onwards, I just think every generation is smoother, at least from what I can tell. I don't know about sharpness, though. I don't know if you've noticed anything like that. Like I've noticed better frame pacing over time.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I believe that the question is being aimed at visual fidelity.
Yes.
Visual fidelity in specific, like and is talking about HDR 1000. For example, in terms of HDR, yes, I do believe that the newer generations work much better with HDR. That's for sure.
We know Nvidia's does versus Pascal. Pascal had HDR problems.
Yeah, and for example, if we're talking about things like OLED monitors, I do believe as well that the newer generations, because they have the newer display engines, they work better most likely with OLED monitors and so on. Now, if we're talking about just running a game from 2015 right now on a newer GPU and the image is better than an older GPU at the same settings, resolution, etc., I would say that, again, it might look a bit sharper or might look a bit better color-wise in terms of color accuracy and so on because of the display engine. But that's all. I believe that going from NPR, like the RTX 3000 onwards, and maybe RDNA 2 onwards, things are pretty much equal. If we're talking about the past, AMD GPUs did deliver better quality. And to be honest, I test a lot of GPUs, and I believe that they still do. I believe that the display engine on the Radeon side is still better and works better generally when we're talking about multi-monitors and so on. We're not talking about the idle power draw because that's an issue of the RDNA 3 series because they have multi-chip module design, and the higher tier cards, since they have multi-chip module design, sometimes they can't work well because of the VRAM frequencies, so higher power draw, whatever. If we're just talking about the card working well, you just go there, you connect 3-4 monitors, and it just works. Radeon is better.
Mm-hmm. So you think...
And you can ask...
Because this was a big thing, though, back in the day. I remember long before I started my YouTube channel, like there was arguments about like the HD 7000 series versus the GTX 6 or 700, like Kepler versus GCN 1.0.
Yeah.
GCN,
I was there.
A lot of people said GCN had better image quality, and I agree, it did.
Yep.
But I think Turing, especially Ampere and onwards, it's less of a factor. But you think it still isn't a factor that AMD still seems to have a bit of a better image quality?
Really, really, really small difference, but I believe it does. And in terms of ease of use, in terms of multi-monitor, NVIDIA tends to be more picky when you're using different monitors and so
it
on.
does. I can tell you, I have 3 monitors here, and it's been fine. Your fingers crossed the past few months, but during the summer, there were I thought one of my monitors may have been broken. It wasn't. The 4090 was just freaking out.
And on the display ports, for example, my 5080 and my 4080 Super, sometimes they just go nuts. They just go bananas. I don't really know why. It is what it is. It is what it is. They normally work, but sometimes they don't. They just don't. And I need to go like there, disconnect, connect again, and it works. Something that never happens on the AMD side.
See, this is why I don't think NVIDIA deserves a price premium anymore, though. Because if you're saying AMD slightly has better image quality, better monitor support, I think it's even.
Nothing that, but not really, because that's nothing that the general user will notice. But they will notice the extra features, like ray reconstruction, like, FSR4 and the LSS are basically on par right now. So they will notice multi-frame generation. They will notice ray reconstruction. They will notice RTX remix games working better on their cards. They will notice RTX HDR. And that's the things that they will notice. And that's the things where AMD needs to improve.
But it sounds like if you think AMD improves those things, then they win. Like they just have a better package for the same price. If they just get those last few things done.
Yeah, I mean, it has reached the point where it's basically a battle of the giants. So we are kind of nitpicking things where one is better and one is worse, because they are just so close right now that it is what it is. It's all a matter of what they offer more for the same price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's very close at this point. I will say, and I agree with you too on like nitpicking, like all too often I'll see people say things like, well, this NVIDIA thing sucks, or AMD FSR is like way worse. And I'm like, guys, FSR 4 is so much better than DLSS 2. And you all said DLSS 2 was magic. So let's just be clear. If NVIDIA is better at some things for sure, but it doesn't suck unless you thought everything 5 years ago sucked. Like we are getting really close to like everything in the past was worse. And you didn't say that sucked.
That's the human nature. We always want more and better.
Well, let me say, if people want more and better content, they should make sure to subscribe to Ancient Gameplays, because I think that is going to do it for this episode. We got through all the questions. I want to thank you again for coming on. Unless there's anything else you wanted to discuss, feel free to cut me off. But anywhere else they should find you, though, besides searching Ancient and then Gameplays on YouTube?
Yeah, basically just on X. It's the only social media that I really use. I have others, but I'm usually not there. So if you're messaging me to, let's say, Instagram, just forget about it. I won't be reading it. It's just there. It's kind of a placeholder for something else that I'll be doing in the future. I don't really know. But yeah, just leave a comment in the comment section, or just mention me on X or something, and I'll be there. Otherwise, nothing happens.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, there will be links, of course, to his channel below as well, so you can find him. And otherwise, I will show myself. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you've rung the bell button. Like the video. Give us hype points. I guess those exist now for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
Comment down below.
The hype.
I know. The hype points. I can't. What else can we do to make this complicated for us? But and then, check out the Patreon to ask guests like Fabio questions and get bonus content like Die Shrink. Otherwise, I think I usually say otherwise like 10 times before I sign off. I know why I do that. But otherwise, again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your week, everybody. This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carbon Cry and Carrie No Sugata as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page in the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie No Sugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guests questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, E. Jits, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rounder, Toka, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jerem Ferrier, Velcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Compressed AI Blocks, Star Castro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Halbuma, Shredbird, Samuel Molas, Curry King 3, The Boss Haas, Tommy, Jonathan, Jake223, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Gamers Unite, Travis Gooding, I Should, Tim Robb, Amiable Chief, Ian Clifford, Zoot Suit Taylor,
Mads, Patty Cakes, Greg, Michael McGee, Winwang, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Salty Internet Pirate, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Teak Autumn, Reginald Ari, Windstar, Little Germany, James I. Raider, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, Justin Bustle, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Harlan, Brian Wright, Jansen Angima, Slushball, John Swin, The Forbidden Juice, RB Eraser, Alex Vega, Solar Ice 80, Albert Gum, Keycom, Matthew Cassels, Sprutnik, Brian P., Hudat 42, Cornstir 671, Penta, Winta, Omega Doge, Huger Ender Kiwi, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Nick Zuzmania, Dan M. 1988, Charles Russell, Smash Axley, Kareem Al Masri, AI Soldier 789, Bespoke Exclamation Point, Ryehill, Cheap Bulls, Fred Berger, Manus Rakusis, Kevin Kuntz, Armand Vakatura, Jonathan Harris, Callan Reichel, Kainush, Kagani, Zubar Ahmed, Johnny Trans, Truna, Josh, RKO, RK0, Penguin from NKVD, Angel of Cake, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music, and thank you to you all for bearing with me as I stumbled through that reading just a little bit.